Hello there, my name is Dries, and today we're going to look over at doing topology with the Zmodeler tool. I do a lot of 3D printing, so I like to have my models be watertight. And I've learned 3D modeling using box modeling. So I like to do my topology using box modeling tools. So usually I used to do this inside an external package like 3ds Max, because this is what I learned. But now with the Zmodeler tool, we can actually do that inside of ZBrush. So we append a polymesh 3D, and then using the initialize tool on the right side of your screen, we are going to create a cube. So we set the resolution to 111 and hit Q cube, and that will generate a cube. And then we switch to Zmodeler, and by default it's activated, it's set to Q mesh. So we use that to extrude our first polygon, first extraction. When you hover over a face, you can hit space to have all the Zmodeler options. For this, we're going to be using move, insert, like so, to insert a loop. So when you hover over an edge, you can insert a loop. And then we are going to use the move to move our vertices into position. There are a lot of options under the Zmodeler palette when you hit space. So for this video, we're going to keep it simple and only use a few. So we've made our cube, we've extruded a face to be our wrist. Now we are extruding another face to be our thumb, and we are extruding it from this. We divided the palm box into two, and we are extruding from one side. Then we move our vertices into position. Roughly, it doesn't have to be perfect for now. So the benefit of doing this is that you're going to have a perfectly watertight mesh, and you have complete control on the flow. So you know, we're in the end, when we're finished, we will only have quads because of the way we work. So we'll have a very clean mesh with quads only. We can have total control on the polygroups and so on. So this is why I like to use this method instead of drawing your topology with the other topology tool, bridging your edges and trying to work out the topology on the entire piece. Drawing face by face. I like to block out the box model. I like to box model the big forms, and then as I go, add more loops and slowly build the shape. So for this demo, I'm using a 3D scan of a hand that I bought on 3D Scan Store a while ago. They have lots of nice, very quality scans for not that much, and they tend to have a lot of sales. So do check them out. Great for reference. So inserted another loop. So hover over the edge and hit space to pick insert and leave them at the defaults. The default will create a loop. So we're dividing our hand into two, our palm into two, and that gives us the crease between the index and the middle finger. Now we're inserting another loop for that loop beside the index finger. So yeah, essentially you start by dividing into two, then into four. And we are slowly adjusting our overall shape. It doesn't have to be perfect. We are going to be using project all to project this low poly surface we're making. So in the end, it doesn't need to be perfect. Just want it to be in the right position. You want it to be in the rough position is supposed to be, not exactly on the surface. Insert another loop for our thumb piece. There's quite a bit of twisting to the thumb. This is so the extruding from the side of the palm and twisting the thumb is something I find gives the cleanest flow and topology. And the benefit of using this method is that you can stop whenever you feel you have enough. Now we're going to extrude using QMesh. QMesh is here is an example. QMesh is an extrude that will snap to the previous extrusion you've made. So here, since we are extruding right next to a previous QMesh we did, it doesn't work so well. So we're going to hit space and use the regular extrude method. And we are going to extrude our four main fingers. And then we're going to move. When you move, you can hit shift. By default, when you move a face, it moves along a specific axis, and if you hold shift, you can more freely move your polygon. At first, I wanted to move the faces. But it's a way more rigid way to move your model. So eventually I'm going to switch to moving the edges and the vertices, and that will give something a lot cleaner, a lot easier to work with. Because here, every time I'm moving, it's moving in a way it looks correct from this viewpoint, but when I turn the camera, it went something completely different. So yeah, now I'm going to use the edges to move them, and it's a lot easier. so. I'm going to move the tip of the fingers into position. There we go. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be roughly where it's supposed to be. And now we are going to take the time now to create our polygroups. So we are going to hide everything we don't need, and yeah, build our polygroups now. Since we're at this such a low poly phase, and it's we've built everything we need, all the essential geometry. So now it's a very good time to make our polygroups, and we just have to do them now, and it'll still work in the end when we add all the geometry we need. So that's one of the big benefits of using this method. It's because it's I find it easier to manage everything on the long run. It's not something you want to do for if you're retopology, if you're making your final topology for a game, it's not something you want to do. Because for a game you want to be very conservative with your polygons. You want to make the most use of your polygon budget. Here we're going for quads, roughly all of the same size, and my phone keeps buzzing. We're going for roughly the same size quads and the flow, but if you're making your final topology for your game model, it doesn't need to be watertight. It doesn't need to be quads. Triangles are pretty good for a lot of things, since anyways the game engine will most likely triangulate your model anyways. So using triangles to optimize your flow and give yourself a better topology, so it's different. So this is best for modeling and 3D printing. But for modeling and 3D printing, I think this is what works best for me, because that way I'm sure it's watertight, and I have complete control over the polygroups. I have complete control over the layout of the polygons. I can slowly build it up. Here it's not working because it's masked. So yeah, we've started using project all. I have to play with the project all distance to make sure it grabs the polygons we've placed by hand. You can use multiple hands. No judging. And now we're going to insert the loops that correspond to the knuckles. So we insert our loops, and then we're going to move them into position, looking at our reference below, since it's the model we want to preserve. We are going to align them. So here we're going to make the knuckles, and if you wanted, so here we've inserted the loop for the first knuckle, and then we're going to insert the loop for the second knuckle, and now would be a good time if you think you needed to, if you want to separate all the knuckles into different polygroups. If you think that might be useful for your project, now would be a good time to do it. It would be very, very, very simple. Since every knuckle would be 4 or 5 polygons, it's very, very easy to select and manage. See that projectile wasn't grabbing all these vertices, so we've increased our projectile distance. Trying to go around all the model and grab the trying to grab all the polygons that are a bit off. Now is a good time to grab them, tweak them, make sure they're in the right spot now when they were such low polygon resolution. Inserted a loop for the side of the hand and fingers. Let's see here now, you could stop at any moment if you wanted to have a very low resolution model. You have complete control, and you know it's all quads, so at any point you can stop. It should work fine. Since they're quads, you could always simply hit Ctrl D and start subdividing and reprojecting on it. We want to have a bit more control, so we are going to add a bit more loops. So we've inserted that loop. So we're going over everything. Make sure our loop makes that with this added geometry we are in. So we're looking at all these stray vertices that are not grabbed by the projectile, and we're slightly nudging them into the right position. Trying to fix the flow, but it looks weird, but it doesn't really matter, because since we're still missing a lot of geometry, you can't convert a finger. You can't match the shape of a finger with a box. So now we're still in the box phase. So, but once we're going to add the final loop, this one. Now it's going to start to feel more like a tube. So it's going to be a lot easier to have that final finger shape. So we're going to move the tip of all the fingers to make sure that Project All grabs them and sets them in the right position. We are not going to model in those fingernails, although we could. Just select the top faces and use the inset action inside of Zmodeler. It's not really useful, so we're not going to use them. Here we're making sure the flow of our polygroups matches the flow of the hands. Hit project all. And here you could stop now. Going to. You can still use your regular sculpting tools. So here we've used the smooth brush to try and even out the trying to relax the polygon flow. Having those polygroups set, it's easier to notice your landmarks, because now we know where the wrist should be, the palm should be. Now we're still missing quite a bit of geometry for our thumb. So we're inserting that loop, and we're going to move the tip of the thumb like we did with the rest of the fingers. You can see that this loop we've inserted is going to help, because it was missing quite a lot of geometry inside inside of the palm. Fixing our knuckle. Excuse me. Eventually this cough will end, and we'll have clean videos without coughing. That's the dream. Insert loop, project all. Didn't grab everything, so we're increasing our projection distance a bit. And we're roughly there. Now we're going to add the final loops we need. For our resolution. Tweaking the flow of the fingers. Again, you could stop here. Now we need to add the final sets of loops on our fingers to make them more evenly, to give them more polygons, because all the fingers as they were too stretched, so we need a bit more geometry to have even quads. Hit projectile. I did a pretty good job. When you hit the transparent button and you want to follow this, make sure to turn on ghost, or else you won't be able to edit and move your model inside. So any vertices and faces that would be over the other subtool, you could edit them fine, but anything that is inside the other model would be hard to grab. So just make sure you turn that ghost on. Tweaking that geometry that got a little bit out of hand. Here we're tweaking the geometry a bit, but this is something that needs more polygons. But we don't need to add a whole lot more, because now if we start adding, we're going to need to add a bunch of extra loops to make sure everything is even. So at one point, it's better just to say it's done and just subdivide, and that will subdivide everything evenly. Going over the fingers, fixing all those fingertips that are a bit odd looking. We need to add a few loops, mainly around the wrist. I'm going to try and fix that that wrist flow. Because you could see we could have added a few loops for the thumb, but that would be a bit much. So we're, rather than adding loops to the thumb, the thumb is roughly about the same density as the other fingers, so I'd rather not add more. So we're just going to try and move and relax all these edge flow around the wrist area, and then we should be good to go. So I'm thinking this is more than enough geometry, so I'm storing morph target and I'm starting to subdivide. And as I subdivide, I am projecting our high res detail. Subdivide, project all, and slowly we'll build up our model. We're going to grab all the details from the 3D scan. Checking the amount of polygons that are on the 3D scan. Now we have, this is our new topologized mesh with all the details from the hand. The details were a bit soft, so I subdivided again and reprojected again, trying to grab a bit more detail. Not it's super important because I'm never going to use that model again, but for the sake of this video, I think that recording the video and projecting was a bit much, so it took a bit longer than before. Okay, so now we have our hand that is finished. We can go down in subdivisions and we can hide finger by finger because we have our polygroups. And now we have a working topology with subdivisions, polygroups, and all of that using this method. So I hope you found it useful. If you want to see more Zmodeler stuff or something different, please do feel free to ask in the comments. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, have a nice week.